Hi there, I'm Tim Irvin.
And I'm Stacy Irvin. Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast. Catherine Roscoe Barr, you are our guest today. We're thrilled to talk to you. Of course, former Totum team member here at our King Street location. We miss you, but we're so thrilled at all the great things that you're doing. As a neuroscience-based wellness coach, you've been helping people for years. You're a fitness professional as well, a lifestyle journalist for many publications, founder of the Life Delicious, which is your company. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Of course, a public speaker as well. And recently, a new author with what is now a #1 bestseller. Fantastic. And congratulations for you about the book, Feel Better Now, which says it all in the title. So thank you for joining us today.
This just landed on our doorstep yesterday.
Yeah.
We were very excited because I think it's just new to Amazon or something. Like they said we couldn't get it, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, you're getting it right away. So it's so cool. Congratulations. It's a great book.
So much.
We're thrilled.
We both plowed through a lot of it yesterday, and we'll be talking about it. So one of the things that I found really interesting about it, and perhaps you could give us a little bit of context of how you came up with the idea of the 4 R's.
Yeah, it really came to me during a nap.
Okay, nice.
I was in LA to outline my book and create the book outline. And I thought, okay, I need to make this really clear and really concise. And I had a presentation in like half an hour, and I thought, I have no idea. I'm just going to have a nap. And I napped for about 25 minutes. And then I woke up and I wrote it down, and I went to the meeting to present those 4 pieces to it. And I love them because I think it really outlines what I want to get across. And like the start is just to rescue ourselves from suffering. That's really my mission, is to help people alleviate their own suffering, because I know for myself, my own mindset and what was going on inside of me was the source of unnecessary suffering for a long time.
And did you know that it was suffering at the time, or is that sort of you need a little experience in life to recognize it?
I think I knew. I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable, and I was very unhappy, but I was a really good actor. And one of my clients said, "You are the happiest person I've ever met." And I just thought, there's something so wrong with this, because I'm not. And I'm appearing that way, and I'm not asking for help. I'm not seeking help. I'm just in misery. And that was in the beginning of a really big turning point for me.
That's very interesting. And I think so many of your readers will probably be able to relate to these feelings. For those listeners that don't know you as well as we do, why don't we jump into just a little bit like of your backstory and how you got to this point of so much success coming from a place where you didn't feel happy and you didn't feel like you were having success.
For anyone who isn't totally clear on what they want to be when they grow up, I hope that my story will inspire them, because mine was just a very, very zigzaggy path until very recently. So I got a pre-med degree in neuroscience. I wanted to be a gerontologist. And during my degree, I found fitness. And when I graduated, I decided I wanted to promote health rather than treat disease. And so I pursued a career in fitness, and I loved it, but there was something missing, and I felt very incongruous because I wasn't practicing what I was preaching, and I didn't feel effective as a personal trainer because I knew the change my clients wanted to see, and I just didn't feel equipped to help them. And so I completely left that and started freelance writing about design and travel and wine and food. And then I landed on well-being as I began to feel well myself. And I was like, oh, there's something here. I had been striving so hard to feel well for so long and was unsuccessful. And then one day I felt like I hadn't really been trying, and I felt this foundation of well-being and happiness. And so I kind of reverse engineered how I got there and really dug into the neuroscience, which was even changing after my degree. The concept of neuroplasticity that I'm sure we'll talk about was new. And I realized that, that was what was changing for me. And I was being more mindful, and I was prioritizing sleep and rest, which I hadn't before, and really prioritizing relationships and love in my life. And that really started with love for myself in order to be able to love other people more. So it was a real winding road. And then one day I was like, okay, I'm not a fitness professional. What am I? And I just thought, oh, I'm a wellness coach, because it's all about this holistic idea of well-being. And so that was in, 2009 when I came up with the idea for this business, The Life Delicious, where I wanted everything in my life to feel delicious. I wanted my outlook on life to feel delicious. I wanted to feel delicious in the way I moved my body, in the food I ate, in the love that I received and gave. So yeah, that was a long time ago now. And every day is so exciting because so much changes, and I feel like I'm continuing to evolve. And I want that to be really clear, for anyone looking at my life and thinking that it looks so great, that I still have struggles, but I have more awareness and less suffering.
And how long do you feel like you said you did the Life Delicious in 2009, and was that the start of your journey away from suffering, or was it like how did the chronology work?
Yeah, well, I talk about it in the book. That was the year that I was so miserable that I considered taking my life. I just couldn't carry on. And a voice inside of me said, no, like, you have the tools to figure this out. And so I started what I call a mood, food, and fitness journal. And instead of only journaling when I was angry, which is what I did in the past, which I now know was really fueling my brain's negativity bias and just made it seem as though everything in my life was negative. When I began reflecting on what I did and how it made me feel, I was able to change my behavior because I wasn't unmindful of that I was creating my own suffering. And I focused on what I was grateful for, which totally changed the lens through which I was looking. So yes, there was still struggle and hardship in my life, but I could also take in the good. And that's really, really important for us all to remember on a daily basis, that just the practice of saying what's good will really change how you see things, and how you think changes how you act. You can't change your behavior unless you think differently. So that's where the book starts. That's this concept of rescuing yourself, is like, what's going on in here?
There are so many questions I have, and I do really love so many of the things that you covered in the book. What I think is cool about what you're doing and maybe unique is that you did these retreats, and the foreword is so lovely, and I found that I'm sure that will resonate with so many people. But you kind of put the work in first, and then you learned from that. And then on top of it, you're approaching it from a real science way. Because the reason I appreciate that is something that you mentioned earlier, is that when you were working in fitness, you didn't feel authentic, that, you were necessarily doing something that you were even getting the benefits from, because you weren't feeling great about it. And we have so many voices in this space right now, like, holy, it's you can't scroll through social media or YouTube or anything and not just have stuff thrown at you all the time. Like, you should do this, you should macro and micro and all of these things. And I know that so many people, women in particular, are overwhelmed by the information. I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about how your experience with the retreat and those close relationships with those women you worked with got you to some of the information that got included in this?
Yes. Oh, I love this question, Stacy. It is so overwhelming. Like, we hear 1,000 different things every day, and we're just like, what do we do? And so that's the first part of the book, is about rewilding and just shedding everything away that we've learned, that's been programmed, and just say, what is true for me? And I truly believe that everyone has the answers inside of them, that we all have incredible wisdom inside of us and intuition. And because our life is so busy, we can't hear it. It's too quiet. And so it's only when we pause and listen and say, like, what is true for me? What do I need? If everybody's saying kale's the greatest thing and you got to eat kale. And every time you eat kale, you got indigestion. You're like, I'm not, it's like, you don't need kale. You need something else. And so I believe in the power of reflection and awareness and mindfulness, that if that's the only thing someone took away from my book, I would be really pleased with that, because that is a life-changing practice to ask yourself what's true for you.
I've been thinking a little bit about the amazing amount of information and good quality health and wellness information that's available now. Talk about overwhelming. And I think the three of us can understand where the good quality sources are, but at the same time, for each individual, like, wow, where do you start? Because everything, if you've got 5 different experts in different fields, they're saying 1 or 2 things are really important. So that's 10 things that are really important. So I think your idea of the rewilding, and this is actually a question. If I'm looking at those 10 things from these real good experts, do I just say, okay, which thing is most appealing to me? And I'm going to start with that.
Yes. And that's what I say at the start of my retreats. We're going to be in this room together for 5 days, and I'm going to tell you all kinds of stuff. And I believe that everybody has this unique soil, and I have all these seeds, and I'm going to throw a whole bunch of seeds at you. And for your unique soil, the seeds that you need in your life are what are going to take root, and forget everything else. Whatever resonates or aligns with you or lights you up or excites you or maybe even makes you feel a little bit scared in a good way, that's what you need. And then it's up to you to water it, give it sunshine, give it nutrients. And so I really think that we should start with what we're drawn to, because that's easier. And I'm all about ease and simplicity and making it simple for ourselves. So if it feels overwhelming, just flip to, like, one of the 4 sections is rituals, and it's moving your body, nourishing your body, resting your body, and connecting with other bodies. And so I would suggest just starting where you're most interested in, what's easy for you, and then building on that.
Is it difficult for people that you work with to let go sort of those societal norms and the things that we've been told are important?
Yeah, I think it's really challenging. And the wonderful thing about getting older, at least for myself, and a lot of people I know with, is that it gets easier and easier. But I think the pleasure that we get from being who we really are is such a powerful force that, even, like, I just wish I knew this when I was 18 or 20, and I really hope for any of the younger people listening or reading the book that you can just create that space in your life. 30 seconds, it takes your brain 30 seconds to begin to change. If you can just pause and say, what's true for me? What do I know I need? What feels good? What is good? And you will always get the answers when you ask a question. And then you just need to take consistent action. And, even if it's just 1% of filling that need in your life.
What are the things that you think? So obviously you you had a journey that was your personal journey, and I'm sure that you used many of these tools, and it's always nice that you had the education to become an expert in many of these things. When we talk about the neural side of this, so neuroplasticity meaning that we are trying to make changes, right, with habits that we're doing or things that we're saying. What did you find personally was most effective for you in that area?
Oh, I love this question. So this is why my company is called The Life Delicious, and why the subtitle of my book is The Life-Changing Power of Simple Pleasures. Because when we associate behavior as painful,
Right.
it takes so much more energy to do it. And so, with clients who were like, I want to run a marathon, but I hate running and I don't like the rain and it's hard to get up. It's like, how are you talking about that? It's going to be so hard for you to practice, getting ready for this
Right.
thing. But if you can focus on the pleasure of it, I feel so proud of myself when I'm done. I love listening to the birds chirping as the sun rises. I got these beautiful new shoes that I maybe wouldn't have spent, like, if you can make sure that the words you're using to describe the thing you want to do is focused on the pleasure and not the pain, it's going to be so much easier. You're going to be pulled towards it, galvanized. But if you in your mind are defining things as painful, you're going to be repelled from it. And so it's going to take so much more energy to do the thing. And I think that's what I was doing unconsciously before I realized what I had done was by focusing on the pleasure in things, I was rewiring my brain to galvanize me to healthy habits. And even better, I was unwiring my brain from the destructive habits that I had unconsciously been practicing and were adding to so much of my suffering. So it was like a double awesome whammy. And it takes our brain 10 to 30 seconds to begin those physical changes when we pause and say, how did that make me feel?
Wow. That is very powerful. And it's interesting that you say that because, Tim and we've been in this industry for a while.
Yep.
And we've seen trends. We could even start with, say, Jane Fonda, and love her and all the things that she does. But that was the decade of burn fat and burn this and destroy this. And we still see a bit of that, but those words were, especially for women, those words were always used in referral to our workout. Like, I'm going to crush my glutes. I'm going to, burn the fat off my stomach. And those words are not great words. They're not caring words. And I think that could be super powerful, that you're going into the gym with a different mindset of taking care of your body, of energizing your body, of activating your body, of feeling like some flow in the movement, which are some of the words that we're hearing more now. And, the other thing when you say this that makes me think about a kind of a correlation, the Martha Stewart documentary. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it. Love her. Yeah. It's having a moment. And I think it's funny that it's having a moment again right now, in that I'm pretty confident the reason she was so successful is she took everyday things and she showed people how to find pleasure in, picking some flowers from your garden, making, baking something, or preparing a dinner. So where it didn't become a chore, in her case, it became practically an art form. Yeah. And, and we all know it's not that easy. She makes it look easy, but I really am excited about that thought process on the things that we do in our everyday lives, that it can be beautiful and it can be really rewarding. And even if it's just us by ourselves in our kitchen doing something, or even if it's just us like out for a walk with our kid or our dog or something, there's so much beauty to those little things. But in the past, we didn't really recognize it.
Yeah. There's so much power in it. I just discovered this amazing woman who does research on noticing nature.
I love that.
You don't need to spend more time in nature. You just need to notice it, and the physical, mental, spiritual changes you can experience, even if you're in the city and you just say, like, look at the sunrise. And so it's like, it's like being mindful and finding the pleasure and the deliciousness in the mundane, even in the hard, like, wow, this is really hard today, but like my favorite socks were clean. So there's that.
There's I believe he was a general from the U.S. Army doing a commencement address, and he talked about making one's bed. You always start off making your bed, and it doesn't matter how bad your day is. A, you've accomplished one thing, and B, when you get home, you've got a nicely made bed. So you've got a reward at the end of the day. And I think that that's a little bit of what you're talking about, is you do have to pay attention, and we forget to do that, especially living in urban centers. I know when we get out into nature and it's just nature, there aren't any distractions. So it's way easier to see the birds, to see the flowers, to smell the flowers. But when we're in our day-to-day, going to work, coming from work, whatever it might be, what's a tip that you can give people to pay attention in those regular everyday days that aren't special by definition?
I love that question. So my life was changed by the practice of meditation. And I think my favorite benefit of meditation is focusing on a task. And so for me, it was just starting with the breath: in, out, in, out. When you notice a thought, you just label it not the breath. I got this from Sharon Salzberg, who's an amazing meditation teacher. And in, out, in, out. I have an itch, you hear a sound, not the breath. Come back to the breath. And so how does that impact you in your real life? I'm talking to Stacy and I think about, oh, I forgot to do not the Stacy, back to the Stacy. Or I'm writing an important, I'm working and I think, what's happening on Instagram? Not the work, back to the work. And so that trains you in your real life to notice and pay attention. And it's a practice, and it's so fun to notice yourself. You're going to work, it's Monday, maybe you're grumpy, and you say like, look at this blade of grass, this vibrant green blade of grass poking through the cement in the middle of this city on, a gray day. Like, wow, what a miracle, what a blessing. And so I think it's about growing your ability to take in the good. And I talk about this in the book, and I mentioned it a minute ago, that our brain has a negativity bias. And it's a really strong built-in safety mechanism so we can stay safe. We notice dangerous things, we're aware of them, but we are much less good at taking in the positive. And I think of them like antenna. We have these robust positive or negativity antenna, and we're born with little nubs of positivity antenna. And through the practice of gratitude or noticing what's good, we grow them so we can have a better balance. And so when we're rushing to work and we're late, we can stop and notice the blade of grass, or feel the sunshine on our face, or appreciate the breeze in our hair. And that makes life so much better and joyful and delicious and alleviates our suffering. And so it's just, again, if people take one thing from the book, it's practicing mindfulness, because it changes everything.
I have a quick question about the connection piece that you speak about in the book. And I think that we all need to connect a little bit more. And I think that things like the pandemic were hard on so many people because we lost all that connection. What are a couple tips that you would have in that? Sometimes it's hard you can't really control your connection to your friends and those types of things. Or sometimes it can feel like it's going one way. Like, I'm working at it all the time. I'm trying to get our group together. They're all coming up with excuses why they can't be there or they can't connect. Do you have any advice for people who want to connect but are just having challenges connecting?
Yes, I love this question too. So I'm very, very science-based, but I'm like 2% magical woo-woo. And I think what I'm going to say now is more on the magical woo-woo than science-based. But I believe that we all radiate a certain kind of energy. And I learned this from one of my teachers, Dr. Divi, and she said we can be in the vibration of fear or love, and that's it. There's two choices. And there's so much power in what how we choose to vibrate, what our energy is like. And it's just like that meditation. We're never going to just I am now a person who's 100% in the vibration of love. No. I go to fear all the time, but I notice quicker and I choose to get back into the vibration of love. And I really think we attract what we put out. And I think that connection is so important. And when we just really stay rooted in our regulated, positive, loving self, that we begin to kind of steer things toward ourselves, that's what we begin to maybe not even receive more of, but notice more of. That we notice the love coming back to us. And so that has definitely been a practice that I am very focused on. This, and I've said it in the book, that I moved so many times as a child and so many times as an adult. And I have spent so much of my life just very, very, very lonely. And that is where when I'm triggered, that's what I go to. I'm alone. Nobody loves me. I have no support. And so that is my practice of just noticing when I've moved to fear and vibrating in love. And I have really noticed the more I do that maybe I'm just not noticing where I feel like I'm giving love and not receiving, that I just am able to receive more. And it makes the lens through which I see my life look It makes it look different.
It sounds like by that practice, it kind of happens more naturally over time, which I
Yeah.
think is such a beneficial element of what you've talked about in your book and in your practice as well. And one of the things I really liked about the book, you talk about zoom out and zoom
Yeah.
in. It's such
Yeah.
a cool, like I often use that idea of, okay, you have to, from time to time, you have to look at the big picture, which I think is
Yeah.
zoom out. And then every
Yeah.
once, like you also need to dig right into something specific. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about those two concepts?
Yes, yes. Thank you. That's part of what came to me in my power nap. That when it's so easy to get overwhelmed and you're just in the day to day and you got to make the lunches and do the dishes and then the laundry and then it's the next day and it feels a bit groundhoggy. But if you can zoom out and just look at how short and precious and beautiful a life is, it gives you more perspective and you can say like, okay, well, that doesn't really matter, or I can let that go, or wow, I better start really doing this if I want to live, if I want my the end of my zoom out to be here. And so I think that, when I get the spinnies and the overwhelmed, I just say, like, that's my mantra: stop and zoom out and look at your life from outer space and really reassess what's important in this moment. What do I have the power and the control to choose to do to have a better experience? And then, like you said, then we got to zoom in and get micro level. Like, is my nutrition serving me? Am I resting enough? How often am I moving my body? Who are the 5 people I spend the most time with? What do I want to accomplish in this short time in life? I think it's important to do both because we can just kind of be mindlessly in the middle. But if we can see our life really up close and really far away, it gives us, sometimes we just need a different perspective. We need to change what's going on in our mind to think differently, to act differently.
Well, I think we've all been in those situations where somebody, will say to us, wow, man, like it's so amazing that whatever the thing is. And you're like, what? What do you mean? Like, you think that that's amazing? I didn't even think of that as anything. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a little bit of zoom out, is they can see it from a more broad perspective when we are in our own heads, our own
Mm,
things, and get kind of caught in it and don't have or haven't tried to zoom out and say, look, let's look at the big picture here. I got a nice home, I got a loving family, I got great friends. Yeah, these things are going on right now, but they're a small part of the bigger picture.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Such a
totally.
I think a healthy way of approaching it and knowing, like we see this in other people, like how much
Yeah.
good stuff they have. And unfortunately, our society with Instagram and so forth, there's a big lens on the best things and the perfect
Yeah.
lives and what have you. So there's some of that jealousy that blends in, but it's like, okay, let's just take a look at big picture. I really enjoyed that part.
Thank you.
And more than ever, it's so needed because our devices are really taking out a lot of the oxygen that's in the room. And we're noticing, we have the 3 teenagers that they can interfere with so many perspectives because as soon as you start looking at it, you are not in the moment. You're not grateful. You're basically just kind of killing time and scrolling, and it can be addictive. And I do think that it can lead to a lot of the things and habits that we know that we shouldn't be participating in because it's not good for our attention span. It's not good for us thinking about, what am I working on today? It's something that continues to pull you away from what you should be doing. So, would you say, you talked about that just rewording, like that you should be thinking about one thing? Would you just be saying, like, not phone, not phone? Like, what strategy would you
Yeah.
use for us to get away from that?
So the pull and the enticing, like it's a drug. Like, these devices are really, I think of them like a drug, and that
Hmm.
even with my best intentions of mindfulness, I'm going to fail. And so I create very strict boundaries around my phone use. Like, I rarely take my phone to school drop off and pick up. because I don't want to be just
That's
mindlessly
great.
taking out. Look, I want to be fully present with my child. I don't take it, you know, I don't, when I get home, it has a drawer that it goes into after dinner every night. I put it in the drawer and I generally don't look at it again until after, I've woken up and done my morning things to connect with myself and my family first. I think that like I really have to, and it never comes into my bedroom. And I talked to my daughter about that. She's 7 and she's always saying, when am I going to get a phone? When am I going to get a phone? And I say, oh, when you're 16 or maybe 18. And what? And, I say it's a tricky thing. It's really
Really
like,
tricky.
we were out at a park and I said, look around you, look at all the people. Like,
Yeah,
don't
on
they
their
look like
phone.
a little bit like zombies? I've started saying it
Yes.
zombifies you because people are just like, and I
Agreed.
said, it's a really tricky thing because it's amazing and you can connect with people and there's all these wonderful things, but there's all these really detrimental things. And if you aren't aware of it, it can like really ruin your life or decrease the quality of your life. So I hope I can keep that. I know one day she's going to get one, but I want to have implanted the thoughts that I practice, and not perfectly. I mess up all the time because it's very, very enticing and I want to know what's happening but I think that there's mindfulness practices that don't work. We have to create physical boundaries for ourselves, and that's a big part of the book is talking about boundaries that I know I don't have the self-control to see my phone sitting on the counter in the evening and not accidentally
Pick it
scroll
up.
for a half an hour.
Yeah.
So I put it in a drawer so I don't see it.
Catherine, with Life Delicious. So I love the title. I love your description of it, like pursuing things that are life delicious focused. So can you give us and our listeners a couple of things tips of how to go about doing that and recognizing those simple pleasures? I know you've talked about the blade of grass and that sort of thing. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that fits into that?
Yes. I think the big thing that helped me change my behavior, and I was talking about self-directed neuroplasticity, is retrospect. It's not how will this make me feel? Oh, because, sleeping in or eating a bunch of junk, that makes you feel good in the moment, but it's the aftermath. And so in retrospect, looking back on things, that's where we can really dig into what truly serves us. And so, if you're a person that like we need to move our bodies, that's just a fact. Every human needs to move their body, but what feels good to your body? If you really, really, really don't like running, how about dancing? How about rowing? How about, what's biking? How about something else? And so that retrospective, how did that make me feel? In the book, I talk about something called type 2 fun, which I learned from my brother, who's a very extreme outdoor guy. And type 2 fun is only fun in retrospect. And so when you're doing a big hike and it's so hard and you're climbing and you're like, oh, this sucks, I don't like it. But then when you're finished, you think, wow, you have this positive brain chemistry and your body feels strong and you feel powerful and you feel proud and all these good things. Then that makes you, the next time you're like, oh, what should I do? You're like, oh, maybe I should challenge my body a bit. And so it's like finding that pleasure in the things that we all know, like, our basic, like your amazing book, Stacy, like our basic instinct. When we don't
Right.
pause, gosh, I loved your book. Like when we don't understand what our basic instincts are, we can't listen to them. But when we pause and listen, then we know those pillars that I talk about, that you talk about, that we need to move, we need to eat well, we need to rest, we need to connect with other people, and we need to question what we're telling ourselves in our mind. And I think that it's so much easier to create these rituals. I love the word rituals. It's like a habit that's elevated.
I
Create these
agree.
rituals for our life to support ourselves, to help carry ourselves through the good times and the hard times. And I think that's so important that we all recognize we need different things, but that we can find the answers inside and we can find community who, are doing the similar thing and on a similar journey, so we don't feel alone and that we feel lifted and carried when we need extra help.
I've got one last question for you. So what is up for you for the rest of the year? Like you're doing so many exciting things. Like what's on the horizon?
Oh, it's so exciting. And there's just so much going on. And so I'm kind of traveling my way across Canada. I'm coming to Toronto later this year. I'm going to have a wellness retreat in Muskoka, and I will definitely pop into Totum. I'm in Kelowna in a couple of weeks for a book launch party there. And I'm just trying to get the word out. I really, truly just want to help people with their well-being. So I'm got some more podcasts coming up, and lots of leisure time with my family now that the sun's finally out. My intention is to be my best client. I want to follow my advice better than anyone, so I can be like a poster board for just like, I want to be authentic. I want someone to say you're the happiest person I met and be able to truly say, yeah, I am.
That's great.
That is great. That's an awesome full circle. The book is outstanding. Congratulations. I know how much work and love and all the things that go into this. And more than ever, I think, in this environment, we need this book because it's easy to understand. These are easy things. They're practical. You've done it. You know how to do it. You've had clients struggle from all different areas that you talk about in your book. So I think that everyone that reads it is going to be able to see themselves and find pieces of the book that actually really do help them feel better. So congratulations. And thank you for writing this book, because we all want people to feel better. We want people's health to get better. We can't wait to see you. We have news about Muskoka, so we're going to talk about that. So we will for sure see you when you are here and when you're up in Muskoka. We can't wait.
Amazing.
Thank you for joining us, Catherine. It's awesome to see you.
Thank you. See you again soon. Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Totum Wellness Podcast. Please follow us on Apple, Google, or Spotify and leave a 5-star review and comment. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, and please spread the word to family and friends.